Are you still awake? The night is soft now, a quiet cradle for those who linger between sleep and memory. Perhaps you feel it too, a pull toward a time when the world trembled with faith and fire, when ordinary souls like you walked paths that history has half forgotten. Tonight I'll carry you to a dusty road in the spring of 1096, where the People's Crusade begins, a tide of hope and desperation under a merciless sun. Don't drift off too soon. Some stories are so fragile, so woven into the cracks of time, that if you close your eyes too early, they might vanish forever. Now dim the lights, lie back, and let me guide you into a dream of a world that has not yet found rest. Part 1. A Dusty Road to Jerusalem, ****. You step gently onto a sun-scorched path, the dirt dry and cracked beneath your sandals, each grain biting into your blistered feet like tiny teeth. It's spring in 1096 somewhere in the Rhineland, and the air hums with the fervor of the People's Crusade. You're no knight, no lord clad in gleaming mail, just a weaver from a small village, your hands still rough from the loom, your heart pounding with a mix of fear and faith. Around you thousands shuffle forward, a ragtag army of peasants, priests, and wanderers, all drawn by Peter the Hermit's fiery sermons. He promised salvation, a path to Jerusalem, a chance to touch the Holy Land's sacred stones. The sky above is a pale, endless blue, but the dust kicked up by countless feet stings your eyes, coats your throat with a gritty taste like swallowing the earth itself. The crowd moves as one, yet each soul carries their own burden. To your left, a woman clutches a wooden cross, her fingers trembling as she mutters prayers, her lips cracked and dry. To your right, a boy no older than 12 drags a sack of barley, his eyes wide with dreams of glory, though his shoulders sag under the weight. You hear the creak of a cart's wheels, the low bleat of a goat trailing its owner, and the distant chant of a hymn off-key, but fervent, rising like smoke. The smell of unwashed bodies mingles with the faint sweetness of wildflowers crushed underfoot, and the air feels thick, heavy with sweat and hope. You pull your cloak tighter, though the sun beats down, and wonder if you've made a terrible mistake. A man stumbles beside you, his face gaunt, his tunic patched and fraying at the seams. God wills it, he rasps more to himself than to you, his breath sour with hunger. You nod, unsure, your stomach twisting. The People's Crusade, historians later say, was a disaster born of zeal, a chaotic prelude to the First Crusade led not by kings but by dreamers and the desperate. Some scholars argue Peter the Hermit was a visionary, his words a divine spark. Others call him a reckless fool who led tens of thousands to slaughter. No one knows the exact toll, 20,000, 40,000 lost to starvation, bandits, or the Seljuk blades waiting beyond the horizon. The numbers blur in the chronicles, a mystery debated in dusty lecture halls where professors still argue over whether faith or folly drove this march. You pause to sip from your water skin, the liquid warm and tasting faintly of leather like an old book left in the sun. A child nearby giggles, chasing a butterfly through the crowd, its wings a fleeting gold against the haze of dust. You smile despite yourself, such a small thing, yet it feels like defiance against the weight of this journey. Careful, little one, you call softly, but she's already gone weaving through the sea of bodies. A man with a crooked nose chuckles beside you. She'll outrun us all to Jerusalem, he says, winking, his teeth surprisingly white for a man so ragged. You laugh, but it's brittle like the crack of dry twigs underfoot. Humor is scarce here, yet it clings like dust to your skin, a fleeting shield against the road's brutality. The road stretches on, and you pass a crumbling milestone, its Latin faded but still whispering of Rome's long-dead empire. You trace its edges cool and rough under your fingertips, and wonder how many others have walked this path driven by gods or kings or something less nameable. A priest ahead stops to preach, his voice hoarse, his hands waving like a man drowning in his own words. The holy city awaits, he cries, his beard flecked with spittle. A woman nearby mutters, "So does death," her voice low but sharp. You catch her eye and she smirks as if sharing a secret. It's an odd moment, this shared cynicism amidst the fervor, and you tuck it away, a pebble in your pocket, smooth and heavy. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows that dance across the crowd like ghosts. Your feet ache, your sandals worn so thin you feel every stone. The weight of your pack pulls at your shoulders, and you shift it, wincing as the straps dig into your skin. You remember the monk back in your village, the one who blessed your journey but got the calendar wrong, swearing it was Easter when it was barely Lent. "Foolish old man," you murmur, chuckling softly, picturing his red face as he argued with the baker over dates. His eyes, though, were bright with belief, and they linger in your mind as you walk. Will you see him again? Or will this road swallow you, as historians say it swallowed so many? Night falls and the crowd halts, a sprawling camp of flickering fires and murmured prayers. You find a spot near a gnarled tree, its branches bare, and sit on a stone, the cold seeping through your cloak like a whisper. You chew a crust of bread, hard as the milestone you passed, and it scratches your throat as you swallow. The stars above are sharp like pinpricks in a velvet sky, and the air carries the faint tang of smoke mixed with the sourness of sweat-soaked wool. Someone sings nearby a lullaby, soft and halting, about a mother and her son, the notes drifting like embers. It soothes you, though your heart races when you think of Jerusalem, so far away, a city of stone and blood. You lie back, the ground hard beneath you, and stare at the stars. The wind whispers, carrying the scent of earth and exhaustion, and you wrap your cloak tighter, your fingers brushing the rough weave. Historians still argue over why so many join this doomed march, faith, poverty, or the promise of plunder. The truth, you think, as you trace the outline of a star, is messier, like the dust in your hair or the ache in your bones. An old man nearby coughs a wet, rattling sound, and you wonder if he'll see morning. "God wills it," he mutters again, and you smile faintly, picturing him shouting it at the goats back home. Another small joke, another pebble to carry. Sleep tugs at you, gentle as a mother's hand, but the road waits brutal and unyielding. You dream of the butterfly, its wings gold against the dust, and wonder if it too is bound for Jerusalem. The hymn from earlier echoes in your mind, off-key but persistent, and you close your eyes, the ground cradling you like a reluctant lover. Tomorrow you'll walk again toward a city that might be salvation or a grave. For now, though, the stars watch over you and the night is kind. You crouch in the damp chill of a camp outside Antioch's towering walls, the year 1098, pressing against you like the weight of the starless sky above. The first crusade has brought you here, a weaver no longer, but a shadow among shadows, your hands trembling not from the loom, but from hunger that claws at your belly. The city's stone ramparts loom in the distance, their silhouettes jagged against the moonless night, unyielding despite months of siege. The air smells of mud and decay, the faint tang of blood lingering from a skirmish days ago. Your breath catches the scent of stale bread and the acrid smoke of dying fires, their embers glowing like the eyes of restless spirits. Around you, the camp is a sprawl of tattered tents and shivering bodies. Men and women huddle close, their whispers a low hum beneath the occasional cry of a wounded soldier or the creak of a cart's wheels sinking into the muck. You pull your cloak tighter, its weave fraying like your resolve, and try to ignore the gnawing in your gut. The siege has stretched on for months, since October, historians later note, when the Crusaders encircled Antioch only to find themselves trapped by starvation and disease. Some scholars argue the Crusaders' faith sustained them. Others say it was desperation as supplies dwindled and hope turned to madness. The exact number of dead is lost, a mystery debated in academic halls with estimates ranging from thousands to tens of thousands. You shift on the cold ground, your fingers brushing a small stone, smooth and icy, and clutch it like a talisman. Nearby, a man with a matted beard mutters prayers, his voice cracking as he repeats, "Deliver us, Lord." You want to believe, but your stomach twists, and you think of the butterfly from that dusty road 2 years ago, its golden wings long gone. A woman beside you, her face half hidden by a hood, offers a sliver of dried fish, its saltiness sharp on your tongue. "Eat," she says softly, her eyes hollow but kind. "God's not feeding us tonight." You chuckle despite yourself, the sound dry as the bread you can't afford. It's a small defiance, this shared jest, and it warms you more than the fire. Then a murmur ripples through the camp, urgent and electric. You stand your legs weak and follow the crowd toward a hillock where a man named Peter Bartholomew claims a vision. He's a ragged figure, his tunic torn, his eyes wild as he points to the sky. "The Lord has shown me the Holy Lance," he cries, his voice trembling with fervor. The crowd gasps, some kneeling, others shouting. You squint, seeing only clouds parting to reveal a faint streak of light, a comet perhaps, or a trick of the stars. Historians still debate this moment. Was the Holy Lance said to have pierced Christ's side truly found beneath Antioch's cathedral? Or was it a fraud born of desperation? The comet, too, is a mystery. Some call it a divine sign, others a coincidence recorded in Seljuk chronicles. You linger, caught by the strange beauty of the sky, its darkness softening to a deep indigo. A boy nearby, his face smudged with dirt, tugs your sleeve. "Is it really God's light?" he asks, his voice small. You hesitate, then smile. "Maybe it's just a star that got lost," you say, and he giggles, a sound as bright as the comet's tail. Another man, his face scarred, snorts. "Lost like us, then." The crowd laughs softly, and you feel a fleeting warmth, a thread connecting you to these strangers, all bound by hunger and hope. The night deepens, and you return to your spot, the ground colder now, the stone in your hand a quiet comfort. You think of the monk from your village, the one with the wrong calendar, his face flushed as he misread the stars. "Foolish old man," you murmur, smiling, but his faith feels closer now, as if he's whispering across the years. The camp settles, the murmurs fading, replaced by the soft crackle of a nearby fire and the distant howl of a dog. You chew the last of the fish, its salt lingering, and wrap your cloak tighter, the fabric rough against your skin. Sleep pulls at you, but the walls of Antioch loom in your mind, unyielding as the hunger in your bones. The comet's light fades, and you wonder if it was a sign or just a fleeting spark in a brutal world. The woman's words echo, "God's not feeding us tonight," and you chuckle again, the sound swallowed by the night. Historians argue over the lance's authenticity, but here in this moment it's the hope it sparks that matters, fragile as the embers at your feet. You close your eyes, the ground hard beneath you, and dream of a city you may never enter, its stones glowing under a comet's fleeting light. You step into the crowded market of Acre, the year 1191, wrapping around you like the warm, heavy air, thick with the scent of cumin and sweat. The Third Crusade has brought you here no longer just a weaver, but a wanderer, your sandals worn thin from years of walking, your hands still calloused from the loom you left behind. The city, newly taken by Richard the Lionheart's forces, pulses with life, its narrow streets alive with merchants, soldiers, and pilgrims. The sun beats down, its light glinting off the white stone walls, casting shadows that dance like ghosts across the cobblestones. You breathe in the sharp tang of roasted nuts, the sweet musk of overripe figs, and the faint sour undertone of blood, a reminder of the siege that ended only weeks ago. The market is a riot of color and sound. Stalls line the street, their awnings flapping gently in the sea breeze, offering silks as soft as whispers and dates sticky with sweetness. A vendor shouts his voice hoarse, praising his olives glistening in clay jars. Nearby, a camel grunts its breath hot and dusty, while a child darts through the crowd clutching a stolen apricot. You hear the clink of coins, the murmur of bartered deals in a dozen tongues, Arabic, French, Latin, and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Your cloak brushes against a pile of saffron, its threads catching the spice's golden dust, and you pause, overwhelmed by the life pulsing around you, so different from the hunger of Antioch's camp or the dusty road of 1096. You move deeper into the market, your feet aching against the uneven stones, each step a reminder of the miles you've walked. The Third Crusade historians note was a turning point. Acre's fall in July 1191 marked a victory for the Crusaders, but at a cost of thousands of lives, both Christian and Muslim. Some scholars argue Richard's decision to execute 700 Muslim prisoners was strategic. Others call it a brutal misstep that hardened Saladin's resolve. The truth lies buried in the chronicles, a mystery debated over whether it was necessity or vengeance that drove the slaughter. You shudder thinking of the blood that soaked the sands outside these walls, its memory hidden beneath the market's vibrancy. A thief brushes past you, his fingers quick as a sparrow snatching a coin from your pouch. You turn ready to shout, but he's already gone, swallowed by the crowd. Then strangely you feel a weight in your hand, a small bruised pear left in place of the coin. You laugh softly, shaking your head at the odd kindness of a thief. A fair trade, you mutter, biting into the fruit, its juice sharp and sweet. Nearby, a woman selling bread chuckles. He's got a heart, that one, but don't tell him I said so. Her grin is missing a tooth, and you smile back the moment a small spark in the chaos. You pause by a stall selling relics, their vendor a wiry man with eyes like polished stones. He holds up a splinter of wood, claiming it's from the true cross, his voice smooth as oil. "Touch it, friend, and feel God's grace," he says. You hesitate, your fingers hovering over the relic, its surface cool and worn. You want to believe, but doubt gnaws at you like the hunger you felt outside Antioch. Historians still argue over the relics of Acre. Were they sacred treasures or clever forgeries sold to desperate pilgrims? The vendor winks as if he knows your thoughts. "Faith's cheaper than bread these days," he quips, and you chuckle, slipping the pear's core into your pouch instead. The sun climbs higher and the market grows hotter, the air thick with dust and the cries of hawkers. You pass a group of soldiers, their armor dented, their laughter loud as they share a jug of wine. One offers you a sip, his face flushed. To Jerusalem he toasts, though his eyes are weary. You take a small gulp, the wine sour but warm, and nod, thinking of the butterfly from that long-ago road, its wings a fleeting gold. To Jerusalem you echo, though the city feels as distant as the stars. The soldier claps your shoulder, muttering, "Maybe we'll get there before the monk with the wrong calendar." You laugh, remembering that old man's red face, his stubborn faith, and feel a thread of connection to the road you walked years ago. You find a quiet corner leaning against a sun-warmed wall, its stone rough under your palm. The market's noise fades to a hum, and you close your eyes, the pear's sweetness lingering on your tongue. A breeze carries the salt of the sea, mingling with the scent of spices and sweat, and you hear a soft song, a woman's voice singing of home in a language you don't know. It soothes you, though your heart aches for the village you left, for the loom you'll never touch again. The market is alive, but beneath its pulse lies the brutality of the crusade, the blood that stains the sand just beyond the city's walls. Sleep tugs at you gentle as the breeze, but the market's energy holds you fast. You think of the thief's pair, the vendor's just the soldier's weary toast, small moments that defy the weight of war. Historians may argue over Richard's choices, but here in this crowded street it's the human threads that matter, fragile as saffron dust. You open your eyes, the market glowing under the noon sun, and take another step, your sandals crunching against the stones. The road to Jerusalem waits brutal and unyielding, but for now you carry the pear's sweetness and the memory of a thief's strange gift. You kneel on the cold stone floor of a small chapel, the year 1147, wrapping around you like the damp air that clings to your skin. The Second Crusade has carried you here to a muddy encampment in the hills of Anatolia, far from the vibrant market of Acre or the dusty road of 1096. You're still a weaver at heart, though your hands now bear the calluses of a pilgrim's staff rather than a loom. The chapel, little more than a stone shelter with a sagging roof, smells of wet earth and candle wax, the faint tang of mildew mingling with the smoke of flickering tapers. Their light casts trembling shadows on the walls, painting saints and angels that seem to watch with weary eyes. Around you a handful of crusaders kneel or stand, their breaths visible in the chill. The air hums with a low chant, a Latin hymn that falters as voices tire. Outside the camp as restless horses snort their hooves sinking into the mud, while distant voices argue over dwindling supplies. Your cloak is heavy with damp, its wool scratching your neck, and your knees ache against the uneven stone. The Second Crusade, historians later write, was a failure marked by missteps. Bernard of Clairvaux's fiery preaching rallied thousands, but poor planning and Seljuk ambushes decimated the armies. Some scholars debate whether the Crusades' collapse was due to strategic errors or divine disfavor. Others point to a mysterious letter said to promise victory, but never found its existence, argued over in dusty archives. You shift your fingers, brushing the rough edge of a wooden cross hanging from your neck, a gift from the monk back in your village, the one with the wrong calendar whose red face still makes you smile. A knight kneels beside you, his armor dented, his face pale and slick with sweat despite the cold. He mutters a prayer, his voice barely audible, but you catch the words, "Lord, why do you test me so?" His doubt startles you. A crack in the steel of his presence, and you glance at him, his eyes fixed on the altar's single candle. It's an odd moment, this night's vulnerability, like finding a flower growing in a battlefield's churned earth. "Do you think God hears us?" he whispers, not looking at you, his voice raw. You hesitate, then murmur, "If he doesn't, at least the saints are listening." He chuckles, a dry sound like leaves underfoot, and shakes his head. "You're braver than I am, Weaver." You smile, surprised by the warmth of the exchange, a fleeting shield against the chapel's gloom. Nearby, a young squire overhears and snorts. Maybe God's just busy with the monk who can't read a calendar. The night laughs again, softer this time, and you feel a thread of connection, fragile but real, tying you to these strangers. The hymn falters and silence settles, broken only by the drip of water from the roof and the distant cry of a night bird. You think of the butterfly from that long-ago road, its golden wings a memory of hope, and the comet's streak outside Antioch, a light you're still not sure was divine. The knight shifts his armor, clinking softly, and pulls a small object from his pouch, a child's toy, a carved wooden horse, its paint chipped. "For my son," he says almost to himself, his fingers tracing its edges. "If I ever see him again." You nod your throat tight and think of the pair from Acres Market, another small gift in a brutal world. Historians puzzle over moments like this. Did the Crusaders' faith waver in the face of defeat? or did it grow stronger in the mud of Anatolia? The knight's toy horse, if it survived, would be a relic of the heart, not the kind sold in acres' stalls, but no chronicle records such things. You look at the candle, its flame trembling as if unsure of its own light, and feel the weight of the crusade pressing down. The air grows colder, the mildew sharper, and you pull your cloak tighter, its dampness a heavy embrace. Outside the camp stirs a shout, the clatter of a dropped sword. You stand your knees stiff and follow the knight to the door. The night is dark, the stars hidden by clouds, and the air carries the scent of mud and fear. "Keep that cross close," the knight says, nodding at your neck. "It's better than my prayers." You smile, touching the wood, and think of the monk's stubborn faith, his calendar errors a distant joke. The squire trails behind, muttering about needing a better horse than the knight's toy, and you chuckle, the sound swallowed by the night. Sleep tugs at you gentle as the candles glow, but the crusade's weight holds you fast. You think of the knight's whispered doubt, the squire's jest, the toy horse's chipped paint, small moments that defy the brutality of this march. Historians may argue over Bernard's letter or the crusade's failure, but here in this damp chapel it's the human threads that matter, fragile as the flame before you. You close your eyes, the stone floor cold beneath you, and dream of a wooden horse galloping toward a home you may never see, its hoofbeats soft as a prayer. You stand at the edge of Jerusalem's leper colony, the year 1187, pressing against you like the dry, hot wind that swirls dust around your ankles. The Third Crusade is yet to come, but Saladin's army has already swept through the Holy Land, his victory at Hattin still a fresh wound in the city's heart. You're no longer just a weaver, but a pilgrim, your hands rough from years of gripping a staff, your cloak patched and heavy with the dust of countless roads. The colony tucked outside the city's walls is a cluster of low, crumbling huts, their stones bleached by the sun. The air carries the sharp scent of lye and the faint, sickly sweetness of decay mingled with the distant tang of olive oil from a nearby grove. Around you the lepers move slowly, their figures shrouded in coarse linen, their faces hidden by hoods or bandages. The sound of their shuffling feet is soft like dry leaves, punctuated by the occasional cough or the creak of a wooden crutch. You clutch the wooden cross at your neck, the one from the monk with the wrong calendar, its edges worn smooth by your touch. The Battle of Hattin, historians later write, was a catastrophe for the Crusaders in July 1187, leaving Jerusalem vulnerable to Saladin's siege. Some scholars debate whether the city's fall was inevitable, or if a single decision, perhaps King Guy's march into the desert, sealed its fate. Others puzzle over Saladin's mercy, sparing most of Jerusalem's Christians, a choice that remains a mystery in the chronicles. You step forward, your sandals crunching on the parched earth, and pause at the colony's gate, a rough arch of stone. A leper woman, her hands wrapped in cloth, offers you a clay cup of water, her voice muffled but kind. "Drink, traveler," she says, her eyes glinting through her veil. You hesitate, fear prickling your skin, but her gaze holds no judgment, only a quiet patience. You take the cup, its surface cool and smooth, and sip the water, tasting of earth and faintly of herbs. "God bless you," you murmur, and she nods, a small smile hidden in her eyes. It's an odd moment, this act of kindness in a place of suffering, like a flower blooming in cracked stone. A child approaches, no older than 7, his face half covered by a rag, but his eyes bright as the noon sun. He holds out a small twisted stick carved into the shape of a bird. "For you," he says, his voice high and clear. You take it, surprised by its weight, the wood warm from his small hands. "Why me?" you ask, and he shrugs, giggling. "You look like you need a bird." You laugh, the sound startling in the quiet, and tuck the stick into your pouch next to the pear core from Acres Market. A man nearby, his face scarred from disease, chuckles. That boy's got a better eye than Saladin, scouts. You smile, the jest a brief light in the colony's shadow. The sun climbs higher, its heat pressing down, and you notice a faint hum of voices from the city beyond. Prayers, perhaps, or the cries of merchants. You think of the knight from the chapel in 1147, his toy horse, and whispered doubts and wonder if he ever reached this city. The leper woman watches you, her hands folding the cloth at her side, and you feel a pang of guilt for your fear. Do you think Jerusalem will stand, you ask, almost to yourself? She tilts her head, her voice soft. It stood longer than us. It'll outlast Saladin, too. You nod her words, a quiet anchor, and think of the butterfly from that dusty road, its golden wings a fleeting hope. Historians argue over Saladin's mercy. Did he spare the lepers out of compassion or calculation, ensuring loyalty from a conquered city? No record mentions a carved bird or a cup of water, but such small acts slip through history's cracks. You walk on the colony's huts, fading behind you, the birds stick a gentle weight in your pouch. The air grows hotter, the dust thicker, and you hear a distant horn, perhaps signaling Saladin's approach. A leper man limps past, muttering. Even the monk with the wrong calendar knew this day was coming. You chuckle, picturing that old man's red face, his faith stubborn as the stones of Jerusalem. Sleep tugs at you, gentle as the child's gift, but the city's fate looms large. You think of the leper's water, the boy's bird, the scarred man's jest, small threads in a brutal tapestry. Historians may debate Saladin's motives, but here at the leper's gate, it's the human moments that linger fragile as the dust in your hair. You close your eyes, the earth warm beneath you, and dream of a carved bird flying over a city that may soon fall its wings, catching the light of a fading sun. You step into the ruins of a village, the year 1204, heavy around you like the acrid scent of charred wood that stings your nose. The Fourth Crusade has brought you here to a place not far from Constantinople, though you're still a weaver at heart, your hands rough from a pilgrim's staff rather than the loom you left behind years ago. The village is a ghost of itself, its mud brick houses collapsed into heaps of ash and rubble, their thatched roofs reduced to blackened straw. The air is thick with the smell of smoke, and damp earth mingled with the faint sour tang of abandoned grain rotting in broken barrels. The sun hangs low, its light filtering through a haze of dust, casting a sickly glow over the devastation. Around you, the silence is heavy, broken only by the soft crunch of your sandals on charred ground and the distant caw of a crow circling above. No voices call, no children laugh, only the wind whispers through the skeletal remains of a barn, its timbers creaking like a dying breath. Your cloak, patched and dusty, catches on a splintered beam, and you tug it free, your fingers brushing the rough, warm wood. The Fourth Crusade, historians later write, was a betrayal of its own ideals meant to reclaim Jerusalem. It turned instead to the sack of Christian Constantinople, driven by greed and Venetian ambition. Some scholars argue the Crusaders were manipulated by politics. Others say their faith was merely a mask for plunder. The fate of villages like this one caught in the Crusades' path is a mystery, their names lost to crumbling records. You wander deeper into the ruins, your heart heavy as the air. A cracked clay pot lies at your feet, its shards painted with faded flowers, and you kneel to touch it, the clay cool and brittle. Nearby, a woman's shawl, half burned, flutters in the breeze, its threads catching the light like a spider's web. You think of the leper's gate in Jerusalem, the carved bird from the child, and the pear from Acres Market, small tokens of humanity in a brutal world. A man appears, his face smudged with soot, his eyes hollow. They took everything he says, his voice rough as the rubble, even the chickens. You nod, unsure what to say, but he grins a flash of teeth. At least the chickens ran faster than me. You chuckle, the sound startling in the quiet, a small spark against the gloom. He offers you a sip from his water skin, the liquid warm and tasting of ash. Found it in the well, he says, shrugging. Better than nothing. You drink the taste bitter but grounding and hand it back. It's an odd moment, this shared sip in a ruined village, like finding a candle in a storm. Historians debate why the Crusaders turned on their own. Did Venetian gold outweigh their vows, or was it a desperate bid for survival? The man points to a collapsed wall where a faint carving of a cross remains. They prayed here, he says, then burned it. You trace the cross, its lines worn but stubborn, and wonder if it was faith or fury that brought the flames. The sun dips lower, painting the ruins gold and shadow. You hear a soft clatter, a goat skinny and bleeding picking through the debris. Survivor, the man says, chuckling again. Smarter than the monk with the wrong calendar, you laugh, picturing that old man's red face, his stubborn blessings, and feel a thread of connection to the roads you've walked from the Rhineland to Antioch to here. The goat nibbles a charred stalk, and you smile its defiance, a quiet jest in this broken place. You think of the knight's toy horse, the leper's water, the butterfly's wings, small things that cling to memory like ash to your cloak. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of smoke and sorrow, and you sit on a fallen beam, its surface warm from the fading sun. The man sits too, his hands restless, and tells you of a child who hid in the well, saved by a mother who didn't return. His voice cracks, and you touch the wooden cross at your neck, its weight a reminder of the monk's faith, however flawed. Historians argue over the child's fate. Did such stories survive, or were they lost like this village's name? The chronicles are silent, leaving only guesses in their margins. Sleep tugs at you gentle as the goats bleat, but the ruins hold you fast. You think of the man's water skin, the goat's stubborn survival, the carved cross threads of life in a world of ash. Historians may debate the Crusades' betrayal, but here in this deserted village, it's the human moments that linger fragile as the shawl in the breeze. You close your eyes, the ground rough beneath you, and dream of a goat wandering through a burned world, its steps soft as the hope you carry still. You stand atop the great walls of Constantinople, the year 1204, pressing against you like the heavy air, thick with the salt of the Bosphorus and the faint acrid tang of smoke. The Fourth Crusade has brought you here no longer just a weaver, but a wanderer, your hands rough from years of gripping a staff, your cloak patched with the dust of roads from the Rhineland to Jerusalem. The city's walls stretch before you, their stones worn smooth by centuries, their height dizzying as they rise against a sky bruised with clouds. Below, the Golden Horn glitters its waters, catching the fading light, while the air carries the scent of tar from docked ships and the distant sweetness of figs ripening in the markets. Around you, the walls are alive with the sounds of a city under siege, shouts of crusaders, the clatter of armor, the groan of siege engines being dragged into place. You hear the low murmur of prayers from a nearby tower, where a priest's voice trembles with fear or faith. Your sandals scrape against the stone, cool and gritty underfoot, and you clutch the wooden cross at your neck, the one from the monk with the wrong calendar, its edges smoothed by years of touch. The Fourth Crusade, historians later write, was a catastrophe of greed meant for Jerusalem. It turned instead to sack Christian Constantinople, driven by Venetian gold and broken alliances. Some scholars argue the Crusaders were pawns of politics. Others say their faith was a hollow excuse for plunder. The true motives of leaders like Enrico Dandolo remain a mystery debated in lecture halls over faded charters. A stray dog, its fur matted and gray, trots along the wall, pausing to sniff your hand. Its eyes are bright, and it barks once sharp and clear as if claiming you as its own. You smile, surprised by the warmth of its presence, and toss it a crust of bread from your pouch. Better company than most, you mutter, and the dog wags its tail, gobbling the bread with a gusto that makes you chuckle. A soldier nearby, his helmet dented, laughs too. "That mutt's got more sense than half our lords," he says, wiping sweat from his brow. It's an odd moment, this dog's companionship amidst the siege, like a candle flickering in a storm. You walk along the wall, the dog trailing at your heels, its claws clicking softly. Below, the city hums with tension. Merchants board up stalls, women carry children to safety, and priests chant louder as if to drown out the approaching chaos. You pass a guard tower, its door ajar, and glimpse a pile of arrows, their tips glinting in the torchlight. A young boy, no older than 10, darts past, carrying a bucket of water that sloshes over his bare feet. For the fires, he calls, his voice bright, despite the fear in his eyes. You nod, thinking of the carved bird from the leper's gate, the pear from Acre, the toy horse from the chapel, small tokens that tether you to the roads you've walked. The dog barks again, drawing your gaze to a crack in the wall where a single purple flower blooms stubborn and frail. You kneel its petals soft under your fingers and wonder how it survives in such a place. A woman's voice startles you, a merchant's wife, her face lined with worry. "That flower's been there since spring," she says, her hands twisting a cloth. "God's sign or just dumb luck?" You shrug, smiling. "Maybe it's just too stubborn to die." She laughs, a sound like breaking glass, and the dog yips as if in agreement. You think of the monk's red face, his calendar errors, and chuckle softly. "Even he'd call it a miracle," you say, and she nods, her eyes distant. Historians still argue over the flower. Did such small signs sustain the city's defenders, or were they forgotten in the chaos of the sack? The chronicles mention no dogs, no flowers, but they speak of betrayal of crusaders turning on their own. You stand, the wind sharper now, carrying the scent of salt and smoke. The dog nudges your hand, and you pat its head, its fur rough but warm. The soldier from earlier calls out, "If that mutt leads us to Jerusalem, I'm following," you laugh. The sound swallowed by the wind, and feel a thread of connection to the village you left the comet over Antioch, the leper's water. Sleep tugs at you, gentle as the dog's nudge, but the city's fate looms large. You think of the flower, the boy's bucket, the soldiers, just small moments that defy the brutality of the siege. Historians may debate Dandolo's motives, but here on these ancient walls it's the human threads that matter, fragile as the flower's petals. You close your eyes, the stone cool beneath you, and dream of a gray dog trotting through a city about to fall, its bark a faint echo of hope. You trudge along a sun-baked trail in 1099, the first Crusade's final push toward Jerusalem, heavy in the air like the dust that clings to your cloak. You're still a weaver at heart, though your hands now grip a gnarled staff, your sandals so worn they're little more than scraps of leather bound with twine. The path stretches through a rocky valley, its stones sharp underfoot, and the sun beats down its heat, a weight on your shoulders. The air smells of dry earth and sweat, with a faint, fleeting sweetness of wild thyme crushed beneath countless feet. Your throat is parched, the memory of the leper's water from Jerusalem's gate, a distant comfort, and the wooden cross at your neck, the monk's gift that fool with the wrong calendar sways with each step. Around you, pilgrims and soldiers shuffle forward, their faces gaunt, their eyes fixed on the horizon where Jerusalem's walls are said to rise. The hum of their voices blends with the buzz of flies, the creak of a cart's wheels, and the occasional bleat of a goat straggling behind. Your pack, light now with only a crust of bread and a pear core from Acre, digs into your back, its straps frayed like your patience. The First Crusade, historians later write, was a grueling march after Antioch's fall in 1098. The Crusaders pressed on to Jerusalem, driven by faith, but plagued by starvation and disease. Some scholars debate the role of a relic found on this trail, a fragment of bone said to belong to St. John, though its authenticity is a mystery argued over in dusty tomes and lecture halls. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow, your fingers brushing the cross, its wood warm and smooth. A woman nearby, her hair gray and tangled, kneels to pick up a small chipped stone from the path. "It's holy," she whispers, clutching it like a treasure. You tilt your head, curious, and she shows you a faint carving, perhaps a cross etched into its surface. From the Baptist's tomb, she insists, her eyes bright. You nod, unsure, but her certainty is a spark in the heat. "Better than my sandals," you say, lifting a foot to show the tattered leather. She laughs, a dry, rasping sound, and says, "Those might be relics by the time we reach Jerusalem." You chuckle, the jest a brief shield against the road's brutality. A man ahead, his tunic patched over, hears and grins. "If sandals count as relics, I'm a saint already." His voice is hoarse, but his wink is bright, and you smile, thinking of the dog on Constantinople's walls, the goat in the burned village, the butterfly from that first road. The woman tucks her stone into a pouch, and you walk on together, the trail sloping upward, each step a stab of pain through your feet. You think of the knight's toy horse, the leper's carved bird, the flower on the wall, small things that anchor you to this endless march. The woman hums a hymn off-key but fervent, and you join in, your voice cracking like the earth beneath you. The sun climbs higher, its light harsh, and you pass a crumbling shrine, its stones half buried in the dust. A pilgrim kneels there muttering prayers, his hands clutching a rosary of knotted cord. You pause, drawn to the shrine's faint carving, a fish perhaps, or a shepherd's crook weathered by time. Historians argue over such relics. Did they inspire the Crusaders to victory, or were they mere trinkets sold to desperate souls? The woman beside you touches the shrine, her fingers trembling. "It's real," she says, more to herself than you. You nod, thinking of the monk's stubborn faith, his red face as he misread the stars. Even he'd believe it, you say, and she smiles, a flicker of warmth in the heat. The trail grows steeper and your legs ache, the dust coating your tongue like ash. A boy runs past, kicking a stone, his laughter sharp and fleeting. "Faster than us," the man calls, and you laugh, picturing the monk chasing him with a misdated scroll. The air grows hotter, the time's sweetness fading, replaced by the sourness of unwashed bodies and the faint tang of blood from a soldier's bandaged arm. You clutch the cross, its weight a reminder of the roads you've walked from the Rhineland to Antioch, to hear each step a thread in a brutal tapestry. Sleep tugs at you, gentle as the woman's hymn, but the trail's end looms Jerusalem, a whisper on the wind. You think of the chipped stone, the man's jest, the shrine's faint carving, small moments that defy the march's hardship. Historians may debate the relic's truth, but here on this dusty path it's the human threads that matter, fragile as the time underfoot. You close your eyes, the ground hard beneath you, and dream of a carved stone glowing in a city you may yet see, its light soft as the hope you carry still. You climb the rickety steps of a siege tower, the year 1099, pressing against you like the heat of the Judean sun, its rays baking the wooden planks beneath your feet. The First Crusade has brought you here to the walls of Jerusalem, the city so close you can almost taste its dust. You're still a weaver at heart, though your hands now grip the rough splintered railing, your sandals barely holding together after the long march from the Rhineland. The tower sways with each step, its timbers groaning like an old man's bones, and the air smells of pitch and sweat mingled with the faint, dry scent of scorched earth. Below, the Crusader camp hums with shouts, the clang of hammers, and the distant wail of a ram's horn calling warriors to prayer or battle. Around you, soldiers and pilgrims crowd the tower's narrow platform, their armor clinking, their faces slick with grime and resolve. The walls of Jerusalem loom ahead, their stones golden in the dawn light, unyielding despite weeks of siege. You clutch the wooden cross at your neck. The monk's gift, his red face and wrong calendar, a distant memory that still makes you smile. The siege of Jerusalem, historians later write, was the First Crusade's brutal climax. After Antioch, the Crusaders reached the city in June 1099, their numbers thinned by starvation and battle. Some scholars debate a reported miracle, a vision of St. George leading the charge, while others argue it was a hallucination born of desperation. The truth remains a mystery, its details lost in faded scrolls. You steady yourself as the tower lurches, a soldier's shoulder brushing yours. He's young, his beard patchy, his eyes wide with fear he tries to hide. "If I fall, tell my mother I died bravely," he says, his voice trembling. You nod, gripping the railing tighter, and reply, "Only if you tell her I died weaving." He laughs, a sharp, nervous sound, and the man beside him, older and scarred, snorts. "Weave us a ladder to heaven, then, before the Saracens weave us a grave." You chuckle the jest, a fleeting shield against the creaking tower, and the arrows whistling past, one thudding into the wood near your hand. It's an odd moment, this shared humor amidst the chaos, like a spark in a storm. The tower inches closer to the wall, pushed by men below, their grunts rising like a chant. You smell the tar coating the tower's sides, meant to repel fire, and feel the heat radiating from the sun-warmed wood. A woman below, her hair tied back, hands you a water skin, its leather cracked, but the water cool and faintly sweet. "Drink," she says, her voice steady despite the sweat on her brow. You sip, thinking of the leper's water, the pear from Acre, the chipped stone from the trail, small gifts that tether you to this brutal journey. You hand it back, and she winks. "Better than the monk's calendar, eh?" You laugh, picturing his flustered blessings, and feel a thread of connection to the roads you've walked. The tower shudders, now close enough to smell the city's dust, and you peer over the edge. Jerusalem's walls gleam, their stones scarred by siege engines, and you wonder if the St. George vision was real, a glowing figure in the haze. Historians argue over its truth. Did it inspire the final assault on July 15th, or was it a tale spun to rally the weary? You grip the cross, its wood warm, and think of the butterfly from that first road, the dog on Constantinople's walls, the flower in the crack. A soldier shouts, "God wills it," but his voice cracks, and you smile, thinking he sounds like a boy calling for his mother. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of dust and blood, and the tower creaks louder, its timbers straining. You hear a soft thud, a dove startled lands on the platform, its feathers white against the dark wood. The young soldier stares, whispering. A sign. You shrug, smiling. Or it's just lost like us. He laughs, and the older man mutters, "Better it than the monk's calendar leading us." The dove flutters away, and you watch it soar toward the city, its wings catching the light. The moment lingers, fragile as the bird's flight, a spark of hope in the siege's shadow. Sleep tugs at you, gentle as the dove's coo, but the tower's sway holds you fast. You think of the soldier's jest, the woman's water, the dove's fleeting visit, small threads in a world of steel and stone. Historians may debate the miracle's truth, but here on this creaking tower, it's the human moments that matter, fragile as the dust on your cloak. You close your eyes, the wood warm beneath you, and dream of a dove flying over a city about to fall, its wings soft as the hope you still carry. You step into the dim, crowded ward of a hospital in Acre, the year 1192, heavy around you like the air thick with the scent of blood and herbs. The Third Crusade has brought you here no longer just a weaver, but a helper, your hands now stained with lye and bandages rather than wool. The ward, a long stone hall within the city's walls, is lit by flickering oil lamps, their light casting trembling shadows on the rough-hewn walls. The air smells of vinegar used to clean wounds, mingled with the sharp tang of myrrh and the faint sour reek of sweat-soaked straw. You hear the low moans of the wounded, the soft rustle of linen, and the distant clatter of a cart outside carrying supplies or the dead. Around you, the ward is a patchwork of suffering soldiers and pilgrims lie on straw pallets, their faces pale, their bandages stained. A hospitaller knight, his white cloak marked with a red cross, moves between them, his voice calm as he murmurs prayers or instructions. Your cloak, patched from years on the road, brushes against a pallet, and you pause, your fingers grazing the wooden cross at your neck, the monk's gift from that distant village, his wrong calendar still a wry memory. The Third Crusade, historians later write, was a grueling campaign. Acre's recapture in 1191 was a victory, but the war dragged on with Saladin's forces unyielding. Some scholars debate the hospitallers' role, whether their hospitals saved thousands or merely delayed death. Others puzzle over a missing record of a knight who claimed to have seen an angel, a tale no chronicle confirms. You kneel beside a wounded man, his leg wrapped in bloodied cloth, his face feverish but his eyes sharp. Water he rasps, and you lift a clay cup to his lips, its surface cool and smooth, the water tasting faintly of mint. He drinks, then grips your hand, his fingers surprisingly strong. "I saw her," he whispers, his voice urgent. "A woman in white glowing by the walls." You pause, thinking of the dove on the siege tower, the comet over Antioch, and wonder if his angel was real or a fever's dream. "Tell me," you say softly, and he speaks of a figure who led him from a battlefield, her light brighter than the sun. It's an odd moment, this tale, amidst the ward's pain, like a star in a stormy sky. A woman nearby bandaging another patient overhears and chuckles. "Angels, is it next?" he'll say. "The monk with the wrong calendar sent her." You smile, picturing that old man's red face, his stubborn blessings, and the man laughs weakly, his eyes glinting. "She was prettier than any monk," he says, and you laugh too, the sound a brief spark in the ward's gloom. The hospitaller knight glances over, shaking his head. "Keep your angels quiet or they'll wake the whole ward." The jest lingers, a small shield against the moans and the smell of blood. You move to another pallet, wrapping a fresh bandage around a soldier's arm, the linen rough against your fingers. The man's story stays with you, its mystery echoing the relics of the trail, the flower on Constantinople's wall, the leper's carved bird. Historians argue over such visions. Were they divine signs or the delusions of men pushed to the edge? The chronicles mention no woman in white, but the hospitaler's records are incomplete, leaving scholars to debate her existence. You think of the pear from Acre's market, the toy horse from the chapel, and the butterfly from that first road, small threads that weave through this brutal crusade. The lamps flicker, their light dimming as night deepens and the air grows cooler, the vinegar's sting sharper. You hear a soft hymn from a corner sung by a woman tending a dying man, her voice trembling but steady. It soothes you, though your hands ache from tying bandages, your heart heavy with the ward's suffering. Outside, the city hums with the clank of armor and the cries of merchants, a reminder of the war beyond these walls. You touch the cross at your neck, its wood warm, and think of the monk's faith, however flawed, and the knight's toy horse, a father's hope in a distant chapel. Sleep tugs at you gentle as the woman's hymn, but the ward's pain holds you fast. You think of the wounded man's angel, the woman's jest, the knight's quiet rebuke, small moments that defy the brutality of this place. Historians may debate the angel's truth, but here in this shadowed ward, it's the human threads that matter, fragile as the lamp's flame. You close your eyes, the straw rustling beneath you, and dream of a woman in white walking through a battlefield, her light soft as the hope you still carry. You sit by a flickering fire in a Syrian caravanserai, the year 1148, wrapping around you like the warm, dry air, heavy with the scent of dust and roasted cumin. The Second Crusade has brought you here to a stone-walled haven along a trade route, no longer just a weaver, but a wanderer, your hands rough from gripping a staff across countless miles. The caravanserai's courtyard is a patchwork of travelers' merchants with bundles of silk pilgrims clutching crosses and camels grunting softly, their breath hot and earthy. The sun dips low, painting the stone walls gold and shadow, while the air carries the sharp tang of smoke, the sweetness of dried dates, and the faint sour whiff of sweat-soaked wool. You hear the soft clink of a water jug, the murmur of voices in Arabic and French, and the distant howl of a jackal in the desert beyond. Around you the firelight dances, casting trembling shapes on the walls, camels, swords, or perhaps nothing at all. Your cloak, patched from years on the road, is dusted with sand, and you shift on the hard bench, your fingers brushing the wooden cross at your neck, the monk's gift from that village long ago, his wrong calendar still a faint smile in your memory. The Second Crusade, historians later write, was a faltering effort. After the failure in Anatolia, the Crusaders' siege of Damascus collapsed in 1148, undone by mistrust and poor planning. Some scholars debate a rumored map said to show a secret path to Damascus, its origins unclear, Venetian trickery, or a local's betrayal. The map's fate is a mystery, argued over in dusty journals, its existence unproven. A merchant across the fire, his beard flecked with gray, leans forward, his eyes glinting as he speaks in a low voice. They say a map was found here, he whispers, nodding to a corner where a boy sweeps the floor, hidden in a jug marked with stars. You glance at the boy, his broom kicking up dust, and wonder if the tale is true. A map to what you ask, your voice soft. He shrugs, grinning. Victory or a trap? Who knows? You chuckle, the sound dry as the desert air, and say, sounds like something the monk with the wrong calendar would draw. The merchant laughs, his teeth flashing, and a woman nearby, her hands busy with a spindle, snorts. That monk's maps would send us to the moon. The jest warms you, a spark against the evening's chill. The boy finishes sweeping and sits near the fire, his eyes curious. He pulls a small cracked clay shard from his pocket, its surface scratched with lines that might be a map or just a child's scribble. Found it in the stables, he says, holding it out. You take it, the clay cool and rough, and trace the lines, feeling the weight of the merchant's tale. It's an odd moment, this shard in your hands, like the carved bird from the leper's gate or the pear from Acre's market, a small mystery in a world of war. Historians argue over such finds. Did they guide crusaders or lead them astray? No chronicle mentions a shard in a caravanserai, but the desert keeps its secrets. The fire crackles its warmth, a contrast to the cooling night, and you smell the faint sweetness of burning olive wood. A camel snorts, and the woman with the spindle hums a tune soft and lilting, like the lullaby from Antioch's camp. You think of the dove on the siege tower, the flower on Constantinople's wall, the knight's toy horse, threads of humanity woven through this brutal crusade. The merchant offers you a date, its stickiness clinging to your fingers, and you eat the sweetness sharp on your tongue. Better than a map, you say, and he nods his grin sly, unless it maps the way to more dates. The night deepens, the stars sharp above, and you lean against the stone wall, its surface cool and gritty. The boy tucks his shard away, and you wonder if he dreams of Damascus or just a full belly. The air grows colder, the cumin scent fading, and you pull your cloak tighter, thinking of the monk's red face, his stubborn faith. The caravanserai quiets, the fire's glow dimming, and you hear a soft prayer from a pilgrim nearby, his voice trembling with hope or fear. Sleep tugs at you, gentle as the woman's hum, but the map's mystery lingers fragile as the shard in the boy's pocket. You crouch behind a jagged rock on a hillside near Acre, the year 1189, pressing against you like the dry, hot wind that carries the scent of dust and blood. The Third Crusade has brought you here no longer just a weaver, but an archer, your hands now calloused from drawing a bowstring rather than threading a loom. The sun hangs high, its light harsh on the rocky slope, glinting off the distant walls of Acre, where Saladin's banners flutter defiantly. The air smells of sun-baked stone, and the sharp tang of pine resin mingled with the faint, sour reek of sweat from the crusaders around you. You hear the twang of bowstrings, the thud of arrows striking earth, and the distant shouts of men rallying for another assault. Around you the hillside is alive with the chaos of battle. Soldiers adjust their quivers, their faces grim, while a priest nearby mutters prayers, his voice nearly drowned by the clash of steel below. Your cloak, patched and dusty, clings to your skin, and you grip your bow, its wood smooth and warm, the string taut against your fingers. The wooden cross at your neck, the monk's gift from that village long ago, his wrong calendar still a wry memory sways as you shift. The Third Crusade historians later write was a grueling campaign. By 1189, the siege of Acre was a bloody stalemate, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Some scholars debate a single arrow said to have missed a crucial target, altering the siege's course. Others argue it's a myth, its shooter unknown, lost in the chronicles' gaps. You knock an arrow, its fletching soft against your cheek, and aim at a figure on Acre's walls, a commander, perhaps his armor glinting. Your heart pounds, the bowstring trembling under your fingers. Steady, a grizzled archer beside you mutters, his beard flecked with dust. Miss, and we're all dead. You nod, but your hands shake, and the arrow flies wide, striking the wall with a dull crack. You curse under your breath, and the archer chuckles, his eyes crinkling. Better luck next time, Weaver. At least you didn't hit the monk with the wrong calendar. You laugh, the sound sharp and fleeting, a spark against the battle's weight. It's an odd moment, this jest, amidst the chaos like a breeze in a furnace. A young boy, barely a squire, scrambles up the hill carrying a bundle of arrows. More, he calls, his voice high with fear or excitement. You take one, its shaft rough but straight, and notice a small knot in the wood shaped like a star. Lucky one, the boy says, grinning, and you smile, thinking of the carved bird from the leper's gate, the pear from Acre's market, the clay shard from the caravanserai. Lucky as the monk's dates, you ask, and he laughs, darting off. The grizzled archer shakes his head. That boy's faster than your arrow. You chuckle again, the jest a brief shield against the arrows, whistling back from the walls, one grazing your cloak. The sun beats down the heat, a weight on your shoulders, and you think of the dove on the siege tower, the flower on Constantinople's wall, the Hospitaler's angel. Historians argue over the missed arrow. Did it spare a key figure prolonging the siege, or was it just one of countless shots lost in the fray? No chronicle names the archer, leaving scholars to debate whether it was chance or fate. You nock another arrow, the star-knot one, and aim again, your hand steadier now. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of blood and pine, and you hear a distant horn signaling a charge or retreat. A woman below, tending the wounded, shouts, "Aim true or I'll have to patch you up." You smile, her voice a thread of light in the battle shadow. The hillside grows quieter as the sun dips, the fighting easing for the night. You sit your back against the rock, its surface cool and gritty, and chew a crust of bread from your pouch, its taste dry but grounding. The boy returns, sitting nearby, and hums a tune soft and halting like the lullaby from Antioch's camp. You think of the monk's red face, his stubborn faith, and the butterfly from that first road, its wings a fleeting gold. The grizzled archer leans over, offering a sip from his water skin, its leather cracked. "To better aim," he says, winking. You drink the water, warm but sweet, and nod, feeling the weight of the cross at your neck. Sleep tugs at you, gentle as the boys hum, but the siege's echo holds you fast. You think of the missed arrow, the boy's star knot, the woman's shout, small moments that defy the battle's brutality. Historians may debate the arrow's impact, but here on this rocky hill, it's the human threads that matter, fragile as the dust on your bow. You close your eyes, the rock steady beneath you, and dream of an arrow flying true, its star knot glowing in a city you may yet see. You sit on a worn wooden bench in a small monastery, the year 1095, wrapping around you like the cool, damp air that smells of old stone and candle wax. The People's Crusade is yet to begin, but its spark is here in this quiet cloister in the Rhineland where you, still a weaver, have come seeking blessing for a journey you barely understand. The monastery's walls, rough and gray, are lit by flickering tapers, their light casting trembling shadows of crosses and saints. The air carries the faint sweetness of incense mingled with the earthy tang of mildew and the distant scent of baking bread from the village beyond. You hear the soft scratch of a quill on parchment, the low hum of a monk's prayer, and the creak of a door swaying in the breeze. Around you the cloister is quiet, save for a few monks shuffling through their tasks, sweeping the floor, tending a small herb garden, or murmuring over scrolls. Your cloak, still new compared to the patched one you'll wear years later, brushes the bench, its wool soft but heavy with the morning's dew. You clutch the wooden cross at your neck, freshly given by the monk before you, the one whose red face and wrong calendar will follow you through every road and siege. The People's Crusade, historians later write, was sparked by Pope Urban II's call at Clermont in 1095, but its chaotic start owed much to figures like Peter the Hermit and missteps like a monk's misdated blessing. Some scholars debate whether this error, setting the Crusade's departure too early, doomed its followers. Others argue it was merely a footnote in a larger tragedy, its impact lost in faded records. The monk, his face flushed as always, paces before you, his hands waving as he rants about the Holy Land. "Easter's upon us," he declares, though it's barely November, his voice echoing off the stone. You frown, confused, but he's too caught up to notice. "God wills it," he cries, his eyes bright with fervor. You shift the bench, creaking, and say, "Brother, isn't Easter months away?" He pauses, his face reddening further, and mutters, "The Lord's time is not ours." You smile, biting back a laugh, and a young novice nearby snickers. "He'd send us to Jerusalem in a snowstorm," the boy whispers, and you chuckle, the sound soft as the candlelight. It's an odd moment, this monk's bluster in the quiet cloister, like a spark in a still pond. A sparrow flutters through the open window, landing on the bench beside you, its tiny claws scratching the wood. It chirps a bright, insistent song cutting through the monk's rant. "See," he exclaims, pointing at the bird. A sign of God's will, you tilt your head, watching the sparrow hop and say, "Or it's just hungry." The novice laughs, nearly dropping his broom, and the monk glares though his lips twitch. "You'll need more faith than that, weaver," he says, but his tone is lighter now. "You think of the butterfly from the road, the dove on the siege tower, the dog on Constantinople's wall, small creatures that weave through this brutal journey. The sparrow flits away, and you feel a strange warmth, its song a thread in the monastery's quiet." Historians argue over the monk's error. Did his miscalculation rush unprepared pilgrims to their doom, or was it a minor misstep in a larger chaos? No chronicle names him, leaving scholars to debate whether his fervor or his faulty calendar shaped the crusade's start. You touch the cross, its wood cool and smooth, and think of the leper's carved bird, the pair from Acre the star-knot arrow. The monk sits finally, his rant spent, and offers you a piece of bread, its crust warm from the oven. "For the road," he says, his voice softer now. You take it, the bread's warmth grounding, and nod, thinking of the waterskin from the caravanserai, the hospitaler's minty water. The cloister grows quieter, the tapers dimming as evening falls, and you hear a distant bell, its toll heavy and slow. The air cools, the incense fading, and you pull your cloak tighter, the dew damp against your skin. The novice sweeps again, humming a tune like the woman's lullaby from Antioch's camp, and you smile, picturing the monk's red face leading a march in the wrong season. Sleep tugs at you, gentle as the sparrow's chirp, but the journey ahead looms, its weight as real as the cross at your neck. You think of the monk's rant, the novice's jest, the bird's fleeting song, small moments that defy the crusade shadow. Historians may debate the calendar's impact, but here in this quiet cloister it's the human threads that matter, fragile as the wax dripping from the tapers. You close your eyes, the bench steady beneath you, and dream of a sparrow flying toward a city you've yet to see, its song soft as the hope you carry still. You stand at the edge of a smoldering orchard outside Damascus, the year 1157. Heavy around you like the thick, acrid smoke that stings your eyes and throat. The Second Crusade's echoes linger here, though its main battles have faded, and you still, a weaver at heart, are now a wanderer, your hands rough from years of gripping a staff through deserts and hills. The orchard, once lush with olive and fig trees, is a ruin of charred trunks and ash-dusted leaves, their branches clawing at the sky like blackened fingers. The air smells of burnt wood and scorched earth, mingled with the faint, sweet ghost of overripe fruit crushed underfoot. You hear the crackle of dying embers, the distant clank of armor from a crusader patrol, and the soft, mournful coo of a dove perched on a broken bough. Around you the orchard is a graveyard of green, its trees felled by fire set by retreating forces, crusader or Saracen, no one is sure. Your cloak, patched and gray with dust, catches on a charred branch, and you tug it free, the wood crumbling under your touch. The wooden cross at your neck, the monk's gift from that misdated blessing in 1095, sways gently, its edges worn smooth by years of travel. The Second Crusade, historians later write, faltered after its failed siege of Damascus in 1148, but skirmishes like this one in 1157 kept the region aflame. Some scholars debate a letter said to have been found in the ashes urging peace or betrayal, its author unknown, its existence argued over in dusty archives, a mystery no chronicle confirms. You step deeper into the orchard, your sandals crunching on ash, and spot a farmer, his face lined with soot and grief, salvaging what he can. He kneels by a tree, its roots exposed, and digs with a small spade, his hands trembling but steady. They burned it all, he says, his voice rough as the ash. But the roots live. You nod, moved by his defiance, and kneel to help the earth warm and gritty under your fingers. Will they grow again, you ask? He shrugs, a faint smile breaking through. If they don't, I'll plant new ones. God's not done with us yet. You chuckle, the sound soft in the smoke, and say, even the monk with the wrong calendar would agree. He laughs, a dry, rasping sound, and a boy nearby carrying a bucket of water grins. That monk'd plant in winter and call it spring. It's an odd moment, this shared jest amidst the ruin, like a sprout pushing through ash. The farmer hands you a singed fig, its skin blistered but still sweet. You bite into it, the juice sharp on your tongue, and think of the pear from Acres Market, the leper's carved bird, the star-knot arrow. The boy splashes water on a tree, his face smudged with soot, and says, "This one's mine. Named it after my dog." You smile, picturing the gray dog on Constantinople's walls, and say, better than naming it after the monk. He giggles, the sound bright as the dove's coo, and the farmer shakes his head, muttering, "You're all mad." The moment lingers, a thread of warmth in the orchard's devastation. Historians argue over the letter's origin. Did it come from a crusader seeking truce or a local sowing discord? No record survives, leaving only guesses in the margins of history. You think of the dove on the siege tower, the flower in the wall's crack, the hospitaler's angel, small signs that weave through this brutal crusade. The smoke thickens the air, cooling as the sun dips, and you smell the faint tang of olive oil from the farmer's hands. A distant horn sounds, signaling the patrol's return, and you stand, your knees stiff, the fig's sweetness lingering. The farmer keeps digging, his spade steady, and you touch the cross at your neck, its wood warm, remembering the monk's red face, his stubborn faith. The orchard grows quieter, the embers fading, and you hear a soft chant from the boy, a prayer or a song, its notes drifting like smoke. Sleep tugs at you, gentle as the dove's coo, but the orchard's ruin holds you fast. You think of the farmer's fig, the boy's just the tree's stubborn roots, small moments that defy the fire's brutality. Historians may debate the letter's truth, but here in this charred orchard, it's the human threads that matter, fragile as the ash on your cloak. You close your eyes, the earth soft beneath you, and dream of a fig tree blooming again, its leaves green against a sky still heavy with smoke. You step into the creaking belly of a galley, the year 1190, heavy around you like the salty, stifling air that fills your lungs with each labored breath. The Third Crusade has carried you here, no longer just a weaver, but a rower, your hands now blistered from the oar, rather than the loom you left behind years ago. The sea stretches endless around you, its surface a restless gray under a sky thick with clouds, the horizon blurring where water meets mist. The air smells of brine and tar mingled with the sour tang of unwashed bodies packed tightly in the ship's hold. You hear the rhythmic creak of oars dipping into the water, the groan of weathered wood, and the low mutters of men, their voices hoarse with exhaustion and seasickness. Your cloak, patched and stiff with salt, chafes your shoulders, and you clutch the wooden cross at your neck, the monk's gift from that distant village, his wrong calendar, a faint wry memory. Around you the galley is a cramped prison of sweat and strain, its benches slick with spray, the men around you pale and swaying, their eyes fixed on nothing. The Third Crusade, historians later write, was a desperate push to reclaim Jerusalem, with fleets crossing treacherous seas to reach the Holy Land in 1190. Some scholars debate a sailor's tale from this voyage, a story of mermaids guiding a lost ship to safety, whether it was a vision born of faith or delirium from hunger and storms. The tale's truth is a mystery argued over in dusty lecture halls with no chronicle confirming the sighting. You grip the oar, its wood splintered and warm, and row each pull a stab of pain through your shoulders, the sea's endless churn a mirror of your own weary heart. The galley lurches as a wave hits, and you brace yourself, your stomach roiling with the ship's sway. A man beside you, his face green as the sea retches over the side, his coughs lost in the wind. "God's punishing us," he mutters, wiping his mouth. You manage a weak smile and say, "Or he's just testing our rowing skills." He snorts a faint laugh, and another rower, his beard crusted with salt, grumbles, "I'd rather face Saladin than this cursed sea." You chuckle, the sound brittle as the dried bread in your pouch, a small spark against the voyage's misery. It's an odd moment, this shared jest amidst the nausea, like a candle flickering in a gale. A boy barely 16 clambers along the deck, passing a waterskin, its leather cracked, but the water inside cool and faintly brackish. "Drink," he says, his voice bright despite his pallor. You sip the taste grounding you and think of the leper's water, the pear from Acre, the farmer's fig, small gifts that tether you to this brutal journey. You hand it back and he grins. "Better than the monk's calendar, eh?" You laugh, picturing that red-faced monk's stubborn blessings, and feel a thread of connection to the roads and battles you've crossed from the Rhineland to Damascus. The boy moves on, humming a tune, its notes faint against the sea's roar like the lullaby from Antioch's camp. The clouds part briefly, and you glimpse a distant shore, perhaps Cyprus or just a trick of the mist. The sailors whisper of mermaids, their tales spun from fever or faith, claiming one led a ship through a storm, her song sweeter than the hymns of Clermont. You squint at the waves, seeing only foam, but the story lingers like the dove on the siege tower or the comet over Antioch. Historians debate the mermaid tale. Did it inspire the fleet, or was it delirium's lie? No logbook confirms it, leaving only guesses in faded ink. You row on the oars, creak a steady rhythm, and think of the carved bird, the star-knot arrow, the flower in the wall, small signs that weave through this crusade's brutality. A sailor nearby, his hands raw from rope points to the water. There he shouts, his eyes wide, a fin or a spirit. You look, seeing only ripples, and smile. Maybe it's the monk swimming to Jerusalem. He laughs, the sound rough but warm, and the boy overhearing giggles. He'd get the tide wrong. The jest lifts you, a fleeting shield against the sea's churn and the ache in your arms. You think of the knight's toy horse, the clay shard from the caravanserai, the sparrow's song, threads of humanity in a world of salt and storm. The sea grows rougher, the air colder, and you pull harder, the oars weight a mirror of the cross at your neck. The shore fades back into mist, and you hear a soft chant from a pilgrim at the bow, his voice trembling but steady like the woman's hymn in the hospitaler ward. The smell of tar grows sharper, the brine thicker, and you feel the galleys sway, each wave a reminder of the battles awaiting on land. Historians argue over the mermaid's song. Did it guide the fleet, or was it a sailor's fevered dream? Here in the galley's creaking hold, it's the tale's hope that matters, fragile as the foam on the waves. Sleep tugs at you, gentle as the boy's hum, but the sea's restless churn holds you fast. You think of the sailor's vision, the boy's jest, the shared waterskin, small moments that defy the voyage's brutality. Historians may debate the mermaid's truth, but here in this swaying galley, it's the human threads that matter, fragile as the mist on the horizon. You close your eyes, the bench hard beneath you, and dream of a mermaid's song guiding you to a shore you may never reach, its notes soft as the hope you still carry. You step into a small, dimly lit house in a village near Venice, the year 1202. wrapping around you like the warm, heavy air, thick with the scent of wool and wood smoke. The Fourth Crusade is gathering strength, its ships massing for a journey meant for Jerusalem, and you, still a weaver at heart, have found refuge here, your hands itching for the familiar rhythm of the loom. The room is cramped, its walls of rough plaster stained with age, lit by a single oil lamp that casts flickering shadows across a wooden loom in the corner. The air smells of lanolin and dried lavender mingled with the faint, earthy tang of stew simmering on a hearth. You hear the steady clack of the loom's shuttle, the soft crackle of the fire, and the distant murmur of voices from the village where crusaders barter for supplies. The widow at the loom, her hair gray and bound in a simple cloth, works with steady hands, her fingers deft despite the lines of grief etched into her face. Your cloak, patched from years on the road, brushes the floor, its dust mingling with the wool fibers scattered like snow. You clutch the wooden cross at your neck, the monk's gift from that misstated blessing in 1095, its edges worn smooth by your touch. The Fourth Crusade, historians later write, was a betrayal from its start. Diverted to Constantinople by Venetian greed, it never reached the Holy Land. Some scholars debate the role of women like this widow, said to have woven messages into cloth, passing secrets to crusaders or their foes. Others argue her story is a myth, her name lost to the chronicles' silence, a mystery argued over in dusty lecture halls. You sit on a stool near the loom, its wood creaking under your weight, and watch the widow work the shuttle, flying like a bird between the warp threads. You weave like it's a prayer, you say, your voice soft in the quiet. She glances up, her eyes sharp but kind. "It's all I have left," she replies, her voice low like the fire's murmur. You nod, thinking of the roads you've walked, the Rhineland's dust, Antioch's hunger, the leper's gait, and feel a kinship in her steady hands. "Ever weave for the crusade?" you ask, half joking. She pauses, her fingers still, and smiles faintly. "Maybe I wove the monk's calendar, and that's why it's wrong." You laugh, the sound warm in the small room, and a girl nearby mending a basket giggles. She'd weave better dates than he did. It's an odd moment, this shared jest amidst the loom's rhythm, like a thread of light in a shadowed world. The widow offers you a bowl of stew, its steam carrying the scent of onions and thyme. You take at the clay warm in your hands and sip the broth, rich and grounding. "For strength," she says, returning to her loom. You think of the pear from Acre, the fig from the burned orchard, the water from the galley, small gifts that tether you to this brutal journey. The cloth she weaves is intricate, its pattern a maze of crosses and stars, and you squint, wondering if it hides a message, as the rumors claim. Historians argue over such women. Did they aid the crusade with coded cloth, or were they mere bystanders in a war of men? No record names her, leaving only guesses in faded ink. The lamp flickers, its light dimming as night deepens, and you hear a soft song from the girl, her voice weaving with the loom's clack like the lullaby from Antioch's camp. The air grows cooler, the lavender's sweetness fading, and you pull your cloak tighter, thinking of the monk's red face, his stubborn faith, and the butterfly from that first road. The widow pauses, her hands resting on the loom, and says, "This cloth, it's for a knight who'll never return." Her voice is steady, but her eyes glint with unshed tears. You nod, thinking of the knight's toy horse, the leper's carved bird, the star-knot arrow threads of loss woven through this crusade. Outside, the village hums with the clatter of carts and the shouts of crusaders preparing for the sea. The girl sets her basket aside and offers you a small woven cord, its threads dyed blue. "For luck," she says, her smile shy. You take it, tying it around your wrist, its texture soft but strong, and think of the dog on Constantinople's wall, the dove on the siege tower. Better than the monk's blessings, you say, and she laughs, the widow smiling faintly. The moment lingers fragile as the lamp's flame, a spark of warmth in the crusade shadow. Sleep tugs at you gentle as the girl's song, but the loom's steady clack holds you fast. You think of the widow's cloth, the girl's cord, the shared stew, small moments that defy the betrayal brewing beyond these walls. Historians may debate the woven message's truth, but here in this quiet house, it's the human threads that matter, fragile as the wool on the loom. You close your eyes, the stool steady beneath you, and dream of a cloth unfolding across a city, yet to fall its stars soft as the hope you still carry.